and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. It says here that the devil, the false prophet, and the beast are going to be tormented forever and ever. So, no, I got it. I'll do it. So, what's your thoughts on that?
That's the only passage in the Bible that says anything about tormented forever and ever. I would be happy if that verse was not in the Bible. However, it is, so we got to deal with it. I would say, in the first place, it doesn't say anything about human beings being tormented forever. And in the second place, the beast and the false prophet are symbolic creatures in the vision that John sees on Patmos that he writes down as the book of Revelation. The beast is like a monster, a creature of some sort, animal kind of creature that represents wicked governments that persecute God's people. The false prophet in John's vision is a creature who represents false religion that teams up with and supports the false persecuting government. So these are not really human beings. These are symbolic figures representing entities of government and religion as abstract kind of things. And in the vision, however, this creature that's the beast and this creature who's the false prophet, he sees in the vision thrown into the fire with the devil and tormented forever and ever. Again, the main point to me in that is that there are no people in this verse, and it doesn't say anything about human beings. I would say in the second place, even if it did, I would not feel any need to change my teaching for this reason. I would then say, well, there's one verse that sounds like it's saying human beings are tormented forever. There are 100 or more verses that say the opposite. And if you've got 100 verses that are clear that say one thing, and one verse in Revelation that's symbolic and difficult that says something else, then I must be misunderstanding the one in Revelation. There are some rules of Bible study that have been well established through the years. One says you should let clear passages of Scriptures interpret those that are more difficult, not the other way around. And another says you should let the many passages of Scripture interpret the few, not the other way around. So if you have a teaching that's all through the Bible and you find one verse somewhere that sounds different, probably the one verse needs to be interpreted differently since there's so many that teach the other. If there's verses that are clear that teach something and one that's very difficult that seems to teach something else, probably you should go with the clear ones instead of the one that's difficult. And so from that hermeneutical approach, I'll just have to say, well, this is outweighed by the others if it needs to be outweighed, but I don't even think it needs to be outweighed because it doesn't say anything about human beings.
In verse 15, it says, whoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. So these are human beings, and if the devil is being tormented and he's in the lake of fire, then it would seem, because I actually hold your view on this. I'm just wrestling through these scriptures, and they're hard to do. And if it's just a thought, could it be that maybe even the idea of the beast, the devil, the false prophet, and the people that will die, because of the sin that Adam and Eve did, just because of what they brought sin and death into existence by their disobedience. So is it going to be a grief forever and ever that even happened? I don't know. I just
no question. In verse 15 does say that these people who are not written in the book of life end up in the lake of fire. I'll go back to something we mentioned this morning that later in chapter 21, verse 8, and also verse 14, right before verse 15 of chapter 20, verse 14, has death and Hades in the lake of fire, which everybody agrees means the end of death and the end of Hades. And then he says this is the second death, the lake of fire. And then in 21:8 he mentions fire, the lake of fire and brimstone, which is the second death. Every time that he mentions people, he seems to want to say this is the second death. And I think he's just being careful to underscore the fact that the lake of fire for human beings represents their final destruction, the second death. And that's emphasized by contrasting that with those whose names are written in the book of life, which we noted this morning. The book of life was the registry of living citizens in the city of God. So if they're either people are living in the city of God, they're citizens with their names in the book of life, or else they're in the second death, which is the lake of fire. And I think you put all that together and we still end up where we were before. Revelation is not the place to build doctrines that are not thoroughly supported in other parts of the Bible on any subject, and this one included. Anybody else?
Edward, I want to thank you for three things before I have to go. One is that you taught me why there are even more opinions than there are denominations. Number two, that to be thankful that much more that God is a God that can love us all.
Sir.
And I'm very thankful that God knows the heart and judges the heart of all men.
Those are good points. Thank you, sir. And I would say, I want to say this and emphasize it as well. This subject, while it's important because it's part of Bible teaching, and anything we teach from the Bible we should try to teach correctly, and it's important because it has to do with the nature of God and the character of God. There are atheists who became atheists because of the doctrine of hell, and that's not a reason for us to change the doctrine unless the Bible teaches something different. But if the Bible teaches what I'm saying, that's not a problem for these guys anymore. But in spite of all that, it is important, but it's not a matter of salvation, and it should not be a matter of Christian fellowship. It's not something to get mad at anybody about. In fact, we shouldn't get mad about any subject. We just gently and with respect and fear teach people as we can. But I appreciate your Berean spirit and your open-mindedness to study the Bible, and again, your invitation to come and share with you today.
Over here, sorry. Peter used a little different word than the rest of the writers, and I'm trying to. I think that I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's Tartaro or something like that, close to that. And I'm just wondering. This seems to be a Greek word that it has the idea behind it of more of this prison torment type place. So I was wondering if you had a comment about that.
That's a reference to 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 4, which says, if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them to pits of darkness reserved for judgment, etc., etc., etc. And the word translated hell here is this word Tartaros or Tartaro, whatever. This was a Greek word that in Greek mythology, as you know, was a place where certain entities were put for torment, and it was a place of torment. It's not a word that's found anywhere else in the Bible, only in this verse. And I frankly don't know what to make of it here, except that I think Peter is speaking accommodatively, just referring to something that was a familiar story to these people to make his point that God will judge the wicked. And again, he doesn't say anything here about human beings, but he's speaking of angels. And I think he's just referring to this as an example rather than building doctrine based on that particular story. And you know this already, but I want you to know that I know it. I'm not infallible, and I could be wrong on anything, and I just study and try to learn like you do. So if you learn someday I was mistaken about something, just say, well, he told us he didn't know everything, and keep studying for yourself. Next.